What do you think of when you hear the name Justice League? More often than not, the general public will point towards the movies as a definitive rendition of what the team should be. The movies, however, are essentially a scramble to catch up to the MCU. They'll get a good movie in there every now and again, so long as it's related to Batman. This mindset, however, is very detrimental to the final project that gets recklessly thrown into theaters. However, when it comes to superhero media, there is an area where DC is entirely uncontested, and that's animated content. At least for me, the DCAU is the gold standard when it comes to anything superhero related. I'm talking phenomenal writing, excellent animation, soaring soundtracks, the full package. There's one series that reigns supreme in this area for me though. A show that's been unrivaled under the sun for nearly 20 years now. This show redefined what superhero media could be. This show made me fall in love with the DC universe. This show is Justice League Unlimited. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I think it's really important to take a look at how the show likes to tell its stories. What it does most commonly is open with a very brief setup, like less than 5 minutes in most cases. This does two things. The first thing it does is it sets up the major players of the episode very quickly, which thankfully isn't the entire team every time. This show does a great job of utilizing only the characters it needs to tell a specific story. If the episode is about Green Lantern and his past, odds are I don't need Wonder Woman here. The second thing this does is get us invested in the specific episode's plot very quickly. A good inciting incident or a good plot hook is necessary in an episodic series like this. There isn't a consistent thread until the last season of the entire series. The closest thing there is to that is recurring villains like Lex Luthor, and in season 3 of Justice League Unlimited, the final big threat is a bunch of recurring villains coming together and working as a unit. Now this isn't a bad thing at all, but there are definitely benefits to have a consistent threat to build towards. It allows the viewers to grab onto a consistent plot thread to carry their focus from week to week. Yeah, the writers here don't do that. The draw for coming back episode to episode and subsequently week to week is watching the characters you like develop as people and watching them encounter vastly different circumstances and seeing how they react. The episode setup is almost always something that relates to a character's background, or it's an external thread that makes them reevaluate something about themselves in the follow-up episode. Oh, speaking of follow-up episodes, the original show exclusively does 2 to 3 part episodes. There isn't a single episode in the series that doesn't have a continuation, except for the Christmas episode. This lets the writers take out their time and really flesh out the story that's being told. In the first episode of a set, the writers will tend to focus on a specific character trait or flaw and explore how it affects the character's interactions with the rest of the cast. The second episode of the set will be about the character overcoming said flaw or further developing a relationship between character A and B, usually both. Because they chose to format it like this, we have all the time in the world for all the little conversations that fill us into how a character's thinking. Like I said earlier, the series is episodic, but the writers don't just forget about what happens earlier in the series. If the writers wanted to, they could have easily just reset each character whenever they wanted to do a focal episode on them. Instead of that dumb shit, they just give every character an arc, or sometimes multiple arcs, unless you're Jean, in which case you develop almost entirely off screen. But even in that case, that was the point of his arc, so it makes sense. For example, I want to take a closer look at the first 3 episodes of the series, Secret Origins. Before I talk about this, I need you to listen for a moment. Let's pretend we don't know who these characters are through sheer pop culture osmosis. I want you to forget all about Batman's parents getting shot. I want you to forget all about the fact that Clark Kent is Superman. I want you to forget that Wonder Woman is a wondrous woman. Take a deep breath and forget about the DC universe. The first episode opens with an expedition to Mars, where this guy falls into a cavern and finds some weird writing on the wall. He opens it and sees a bright light, and we cut to Metropolis 2 years after. Batman is watching these really weird scientists do their thing, and they're tampering with some equipment. Combat ensues, and Superman shows up. Near immediately, he takes 2d8 psychic damage, and Batman comes to his rescue. Now stop right the hell there. Just from this scene, we've learned an absolute ton about Batman and his character. He's observant. He'll watch a situation and learn whatever he can before making an educated decision on what to do. Even when he's outclassed physically, he's still confident enough in his own skills to attempt to take care of the situation on his own. Most importantly, even if he is capable and confident in his ability to stop a threat, he will prioritize saving someone over capturing a villain. He has been on screen for literally 2 minutes. So Superman saw some weird images and hands Batman a signal watch just in case of emergencies. Then he leaves to go to a conference. Speaking of the conference, Superman and Senator Carter, the astronaut who is on Mars, propose to the world powers that they throw away their nukes and let Superman be the thing that protects them. Now this plan goes into action, and that'll be important later. Cut back to Batman doing his investigation in Metropolis, where he gets dogged on by this dog. He uses the signal watch to call Superman. Meanwhile, a large asteroid crashes in Metropolis. It's actually an egg. So the duo jump into action, but they're getting sorta outclassed. Again, Superman takes psychic damage and jets off with Batman following him shortly. There's some other eggs popping up all around the world, but somewhere the land is peaceful. Hey, this woman looks important. So Superman's fucking shit up, right? Turns out the images he's been seeing were cries for help. This is J'onn J'onzz, the Martian Manhunter. We open to a hooded figure. Oh, look, it's that weird woman we watched earlier. She's stealing some clothes. So cutting back to the action, the priority again isn't beating the bad guys, it's getting Jean out of there safely. Ayo, what is this nigga doing? Just as things are getting rough, some of the other key players shows up. This is John Stewart, Hawkgirl, and Wonder Woman. Also Flash is here too. So these scenes also do a damn great job of setting up these characters just in their dialogue alone. While I could sit here and walk you through each individual line of dialogue and explain how they set everyone up super well in like 2.5 seconds, Warner Bros is already gonna be really mad at me for uploading this video, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Simply through the conversation each character has when they're introduced, we understand how everyone thinks. For the sake of time, I'm gonna keep it brief here, but just know I'm gonna go into a whole lot more detail later. For now, all you need to know is that Human John is similar to Batman in some regards. He's pretty tactical and he's stoic, but he's dismissive of people who aren't as experienced as he is. Wally's pretty arrogant, but he's smart and he learns from his mistakes quickly.
Haha, I get it, cause he's the Flash.
Wonder Woman wants to help, but she's naive and she doesn't really understand how stuff outside of Themyscira works. Hawkgirl's doing her thing, I guess. Admittedly, she doesn't really get much this episode, but her arc is the focus of the season 2 finale, so I'd call it fair. Green John, not Green John, wait, that's dumb. Martian John is the fish out of water that's the most out of the water. Like, a bear picked him up and took him to the cave. That's really his character for like 95% of the show. I'd also like to emphasize now the difference in pronunciation between John and Jean. If I don't, it's going to be way more confusing in the long run. Anywho, back to the plot. So Jean came to Earth to warn the humans about an alien species that annihilated everything on Mars in a great war. These things can shapeshift and are just generally assholes. The Martians defeated them with a paralyzing gas, and as the last of his kind, John sealed them and stood watch. While he was hibernating, some dipshit astronaut, it's the dude from the beginning by the way, unleashed them. So the aliens start to terraform the Earth, and this group of heroes is set to team up. They split off into smaller groups, Green Lantern and Flash, Batman and Diana featuring Jean, and finally Superman and Hawkgirl. This is where Batman notices the aliens are League of Legends players. The team ends up taking more losses than dubs here. Superman and Hawkgirl are kidnapped, Green Lantern's unconscious, and Batman fucking died! So a really big egg is on its way to Earth. The scraps of the Super Squad are hanging out in Metropolis. The plan is to break Superman and Hawkgirl out of the terraformer. It's gonna be nuts when he loses any fight in the future. This nigga should be unstoppable. Anywho, bad gas. So the entire team gets kidnapped, and then we get this pretty good reveal of Agent Carter being an alien. I know I haven't really talked about his stuff, but trust me, it's set up pretty well. Plot twist, Batman's alive. Jean was hiding him with his telepathy. While he was in hiding, he figured out how to destroy the aliens with ultraviolet light and the power of blue chemicals. This episode is mostly fighting though, so I'm gonna speed through this bit. After they blow up the aliens, they rescue the people who were assimilated. A little while later and we come to the Watchtower, a base of the sky so the Justice League can respond to threats from deep space and such. After some reflection, Superman realizes that he can't protect the people of Earth alone. So he, the Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Diana, not Batman, and Jean agree to form a team to protect humanity, to become the Suicide Squad. Oh, I fucked that one up, my bad. So what have we learned from the first 3 episodes of the series? We already have a great understanding of the major players. Admittedly, John, Shayera, and Wally don't get much shine this episode, but the next 2 episodes were focused almost entirely on them, but that's not really the point here. We can already see the immense strength of the character writing of this series. For every character, not even just the major players, given one scene, you can already tell how a character thinks and what they want. It's genuinely incredible how efficient they are with their character establishment, and baffling how incredible they are with their character consistency. I would just like to mention, we are 3 episodes into this review/retrospective. Thank God I'm not doing the Ninjago thing where I talk about every episode. We'd be here literally all day. So, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about each main character, why they work, any arcs they might have, yada yada yada. Let's begin. So I think there's a fundamental issue with how Superman is written generally, and luckily, this show doesn't fuck him up. In fact, this show, and get ready for something I might say a whole lot during this video, has my absolute favorite rendition of the character. So what makes Superman interesting? Off the bat, it can't be combat, right? Because he's Superman! He's, by design, infinitely powerful, and there's only so much kryptonite in the world. I mean, it's a very rare stone.
Rare my ass. Everyone has one, Clark. A purse snatcher I stopped the other day had like 3 of them.
You know, funnily enough, I almost forgot about it until the last steps of the script writing process, but there's a huge hunk of kryptonite the size of a fucking car in the middle of the Earth. There are ways this can work with the team dynamic, though. Like when they're stopping a volcano from killing thousands of people, and then Doomsday shows up, and they need Superman to stop Doomsday while everyone else is evacuating the area. Because Superman could probably stop the volcano single-handedly, and he could probably stop Doomsday single-handedly, but he can't be in 2 places at once. This is cool, but you can't do it too much or else it'll feel less impactful each time. So if the audience would get tired of watching Superman deal with volcanoes and green rocks for 5 seasons, what do? We show that Superman, Clark Kent, is only human. Clark is easily the most humanized character in the show, by far. It's not even close. There's a specific episode I'd like to talk about in Justice League Unlimited that demonstrates his quality better than anything else. That episode is titled For the Man Who Has Everything. So for this episode, it's Superman's birthday! Surprise! Someone laced his edible. So we got this funny looking thing from Mongol. This funny little guy will put you in a hypnotic state and give you everything you want so you'll never want to snap out of it. Now this is where I get excited, because seeing a character's dream world or nightmare reality is a treat for anyone who likes good character writing, because it does wonders to establish a character's wants and fears. So, I ask you this, what does Superman want more than anything in the world? When we cut to Superman's dream, he's living on Krypton. He has a wife that's almost Lana Lang, his childhood sweetheart, a son, and a dog. He's working a farm and taking care of his family. They aren't wanting for much, and they care about each other. While he's enjoying the simple life, there are earthquakes shaking the planet. So he goes to talk to his father. Wonder Woman and Batman are on the verge of death, by the way. So he's talking to his dad, and he just can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. So after long enough, he figures out that he's living in a dream, and he's about to snap out of it, but before he goes, his son tells him that he's scared. So Superman, who again knows none of this is fucking real, stops and comforts him before he goes. This is genuinely one of the most incredibly powerful moments of character building I've ever seen. This one moment, a moment where he isn't being Superman, he's being Clark Kent, Kal-El. This is the moment that made me love the character. Another facet of the character that I need to talk about is what he represents in the series. Obviously, Superman represents truth, justice, and the American way, but that is the most big bullshit ever. The easiest way to demonstrate what a character means to the rest of the world in the cast is to rip them away in a dramatic fashion and leave the rest of the characters to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. So, let's look at Hereafter from Season 2 of Justice League. So the gang is fighting a gang. Let me try that again. The gang is fighting a group of villains in Metropolis. Surprise, surprise, none of them can really compete physically with the Justice League. So at the last minute, Toymaker starts firing off this big green laser. I'm not gonna say rare stone my ass, but that green laser is definitely powered on kryptonite. You know who's weak to kryptonite? What's really important to recognize in this episode is how, Superman isn't dead, by the way, he's gonna step forward in the future, whatever. What's important to look at here is the reactions to the surviving members of the Justice League and society at large when they think Superman is gone. Diana immediately takes action and almost kills Toymaker. Wally stops her because that's what Superman would have wanted. Batman begins obsessing over figuring out what's going on because he doesn't think Superman is dead. After some time, Shayera isolates herself because she's grieving so heavily. Jean and society at large are concerned about whether or not the League is going to be able to continue without him. Hell, it's so fucking rough that Lex Luthor shows up to the funeral. My point in all of this is that Superman carried an incomparable burden to be the best version of himself that he could be a hero that everyone could aspire to be. And in fulfilling that immense burden and carrying out that impossibly difficult task, he improved the lives of every other character in the series. By dying, or going into the future or whatever, he cements himself as the greatest hero that ever was or ever will be. Martian Manhunter's eulogy demonstrates what I'm trying to say beautifully. I'm just gonna read the last section out for you. The Man of Steel possessed extraordinary gifts, and he shared them with us freely. None of these gifts were more remarkable than his ability to discern what needed to be done, and his unfailing courage in doing it. And in the future, he rides around in a convertible and he makes a sword and fights wolves and he makes a time machine with the help of a former villain. I might like talking about the future stuff more than talking about everyone grieving over Superman, but other than the cool flashy shit, there's not really much going on. Okay, enough about Superman. Let's talk about Similarly to Superman, I think there's a fundamental issue with how Batman's being written nowadays. Weirdly enough, I think I can say this is Snyder's fault. So you know how Batman's like, unhinged? The modern take that the character would be okay with doing shit like this is not a good thing. Funnily enough, there's an episode where a ghost hero named Deadman possesses him for like 2 seconds to save Wonder Woman, but he has to kill somebody to do it. Look at his fucking face. Nice. Very good scene. The fact that I can look up a kill count for a character like Batman is absurd. It shouldn't be a thing. I mention this because it is absolutely necessary for a character like Batman to show empathy. Because yeah, he's crazy, but his empathy is what separates him from all the other crazy people in Gotham. An understanding of this incredibly important character trait elevates any Batman story infinitely for me, and that's why the story of Ace is so beautifully tragic. This episode's actually more about Terry McGinnis than anyone else, and now that I look at him, doesn't he look kind of like John Travolta? The point is, he breaks into Amanda Waller's place because he just found out that his dad isn't his real dad. That shit isn't important or anything. The real point of the episode is the story that Waller tells McGinnis that made her believe the world would always need a Batman. So the Justice League was fighting the second iteration of the Royal Flush Gang, including Ace. Ace's abilities are transforming the world around her, and she's gonna have a deadly aneurysm soon. If she does, there's a chance that it kills everyone for miles. Waller brings a device that'll take her out for certain before she can have that aneurysm. Because Batman has history with her, he's the one who's gonna go in to do it. So he finds her swinging alone, and they share a tremendously heartbreaking conversation. Ace then reveals that Batman was never gonna kill her, and then he stays with her until she passes. I don't know if it was intentional, but he looks absolutely devastated when he's carrying her body away. When Batman doesn't have the character trait of empathy, he doesn't feel like Batman to me. That was fucking cool. I didn't know it was doing that. I didn't know it was doing that until I saw out of the corner of my eye. I was like, that's fucking cool. I picked a good one. I don't have anything crazy profound here like I did with Superman, but there is something I wanted to mention here. We see Batman do detective shit, which is kind of important considering he's the world's greatest detective. To be fair, for the most part, it's not really for crimes, it's more like government shit, but still. I'd be remiss not to mention that investigating government shit is the Question's entire character, but Batman is the one who put him onto Cadmus's trail initially, which sets up that entire arc. And yes, this is my favorite rendition of the character. You didn't even have to ask. Oh, hang on, I'm sorry. I just double-checked my notes. It says I'm legally required to show you this clip.
You want me to what?
Overall, I really like Batman in the show. He's incredibly well written, and he's immensely entertaining anytime he takes the screen. Diana's probably the character I had the least to say about. Other than Wally and maybe Jean, she's maybe the character that develops the least? This isn't a bad thing, as her character for the first bit is mostly just discovering what the world outside of Themyscira is like. In fact, I'd like to take a moment just quickly to describe something called a flat character arc. The flat character arc is used to describe a character that from the get-go is strong in their beliefs and attitudes towards the world, which on paper sounds a little lame, but the stories are more about how they affect the world surrounding them as opposed to how the world affects them. For comparison, think of characters like Goku and Luffy, who are active but don't really develop out of who they are at the start of the series. I'd like to mention two things. One, this isn't a bad thing at all. A flat character can still be really interesting to watch so long as they're written well. The second, a flat character can still mature. Oh, that sounds like boobs. A character who has a flat arc can still mature as a person. The key difference is that the character's general beliefs don't change. I think the show handles Diana's growth from the greenest member of the Justice League. Oh, my bad. Yeah, I know, him too. Okay, I get it, damn, my bad. I think the show handles Diana's growth from the most inexperienced member of the Justice League into a leader and warrior very well. Before I talk about her growth, I just really quickly want to cycle back to Secret Origins. When her, Jean, and Batman showed up at the first egg, it was on site. She didn't understand the value of taking a moment to observe the battlefield before acting. Okay, now we can talk about Hawk and Dove. So the gods are real, like the Greek gods. So Ares goes to Hephaestus and asks for the one thing from Thor. What the fuck is it called? The Doominator? Turns out Ares wants to take that thing over to somewhere that's vaguely Middle Eastern. Ares, in an attempt to fuel more war, since he's the god of war, gives this to one of the sides. Jean sends Diana over to the vague Middle East with a pair of twin superheroes, Hawk and Dove. So the Wonder Twins, I'm sorry, their suits look fucking dumb. Their entire gimmick is that one of them likes to fight and the other wants to find peaceful solutions. Hawk and Dove are actually sort of representative of Diana's character before and after her growth. Hawk represents the early Diana. Do you remember the egg incident? Dove, however, much more loosely represents the later Diana. Someone who's much more likely and more interested to find a peaceful kind of solution. The caveat to this idea is that she's more of a middle ground between the two, leaning towards Dove. It's not a binary scale. She goes from hit it until it breaks to maybe don't hit it if we can avoid it, but also, yeah, fuck it, I'll hit it till it breaks if I need to. In later episodes like this one, she becomes much more of a voice of reason, and that's pretty dope. I guess I can finish the episode recap? So Ares gets mad pissy because Middle Eastern country 1 doesn't want to commit genocide. He then does things off screen. Ooh. Diana goes to Hephaestus and finds out that each thing he makes has an Achilles heel. Hawk and Dove plan on kidnapping the leaders and making them talk, except, surprise, Ares is in charge of the northern military. Final battle time. Diana figured out that fighting is actually fueling the Doominator.
I don't take orders from women!
Dove does this sort of standing thing with the robot and it powers it down, so love really is the answer. So what do we learn here? The Wonder Woman movie is worse than I remembered. This episode in 20 minutes did what that movie couldn't in 2.5 hours. It's not really the time for that discussion. That's not even the point. What is my point? Wonder Woman was really cool in this show, and I like her. This is probably my favorite version of the character, other than the one in like Flashpoint that stabbed Billy Batson. Now I could tell you I like Jon Stewart because he's an incredible role model for young men. I could tell you I like Jon Stewart because he's an incredibly effective member of the team. I could tell you I like Jon because he, along with Shayera, have one of my favorite long-term romances on any show, let alone a kid's show. While those reasons are very, very true, those aren't the reasons I like Jon Stewart. I like Jon Stewart because Jon Stewart is a fucking player. He fucked Vixen, he banged his Green Lantern mentor, he probably banged Wonder Woman at some point. He banged Hawkgirl in ancient Egypt, got reincarnated, and bagged her yet again. That shit is crazy. I mean, we can move on to the next character right now. Funny story, I tried watching episode 1 of Green Lantern, the animated series, like the CG show. I think it was in 2012. And when it was Hal Jordan instead of Jon Stewart, I couldn't watch it. Jon is another great example of the flat character arc. From the first episode, he and Wally are sort of paired off, and they have a teacher-student relationship. And he's easily the one who helps the Flash mature the most. And to be honest, that's Jon's general role on the team. Jon fills the position of resident hard-ass. Other than maybe Batman and Clark, he's easily the most experienced on the team, and he's more than capable of stepping into a leadership position when necessary. But most importantly, Jon is a responsible son of a bitch. If Jon has a responsibility or price to pay, he's gonna stick it through that shit. And what's really cool, they never break from that character trait. I think my notes aren't really helping anymore. But just quickly, I'd like to cover this trait by talking about In Blackest Night. So Jon is out doing his thing visiting his old town. He goes and gets a fresh lineup. Okay, fine, time to go to court. So skipping the antics the Justice League get into while they're trying to make it to court on the other planet, we make it to session. So for those of you who don't remember or don't really care, the Green Lantern Corps are basically just space cops. So Jon pulled over this ugly ass dude while he was dead ass gun running. During the ensuing struggle, Jon shot at a ship that maxed out their parry skill, and the shot deflected into a fault line, blowing up the planet and killing 3 billion. Jon didn't come to court to clear his name, he just came to get prosecuted because he thinks he did it. It's important to mention that throughout the episode, there are multiple chances where Jon can go, hey, I don't think I should get sentenced to jail for this bullshit. And we also get a lot of moments from the other Justice League members going, hey, we can help get you out of this. But no, he thinks he did something wrong, so he's gonna accept the consequences. Long story short, Jon was about to get sentenced to death by gas chamber when the other members of the Justice League figure out the planet is still fucking there? Turns out, the rebel cops that brought in Jon were what the Green Lantern Corps replaced, and they put this entire conspiracy in motion to get them thrown out as a dominant galactic policing force. Either way, the Justice League put a stop to what they were doing. Funny enough, while Flash is stalling the court case, he says out loud, I'd like to say a few words about habeas corpus, which is a real legal definition that roughly translates to show me the body. So, Space Force is just kind of shit, because they didn't require any proof of this? Shayera's the character I underestimated the most going into this rewatch. Maybe it's because I'd recently seen Black Adam, and they did nothing with Hawkman in that, so I had like negative expectations for this character. I am very happy to report that I was fucking blown away by her. Shayera definitely grew on me the most out of the cast, mainly because I already knew who all the others were, so she was just a wild card. They get so much cool stuff out of her character, it's actually kind of insane. So let's talk about the Thanagarian invasion in season 2 of Justice League. So Green Lantern and Hawkgirl are being real cute. Aliens? Ah! Wait, what? Aliens? Ah! This is the Thanagarian fleet. Turns out Shayera knows this Hawk, man. Wacky story, Shayera was actually a spy for the Thanagarian army, who was here to study the Earth and try to beef up their defenses. Time for some lore. Thanagar is at war with Gordania, and the Gordanians are on their way here. World leaders are discussing what to do, and in the meantime you find out that Shayera is actually engaged to this Hawk fellow. So Earth accepts the help from the Thanagarian army, and they start building this big-ass force field in the middle of nowhere. Batman decided to do an autopsy on the Gordanian pilots because he thinks it's a little suspicious that a single ship attacked a major political meeting and got shot down just in the nick of time. And he's right! So a bunch of the Justice League members start realizing something fishy is going on. Then Batman sneaks onto the ship and gets hard confirmation that the Thanagarians really did set him up. He's captured, Diana's captured, everyone but Shayera, really. I'd like to mention that because the earlier episodes did such a good job of getting the audience to like Shayera, while also characterizing her as someone that, similarly to Jon, is very loyal to their causes, it puts the audience in a very similar situation to the characters. This shit feels like a betrayal when you watch it the first time. The writers also did a great job of giving us a ton of the pieces for this twist before it happened. We already knew that Thanagar was another police force that was basically at war, we knew she felt very isolated even within the League, and we knew that she was very loyal to her causes. This shit is just super good, I don't know what to tell you. So the Thanagarian army takes over the world with martial law. L. The Justice League breaks out of the prison, blocking down the ship. Now that they're out on the street and trying to stay hidden, we get that one scene where Batman reveals he knows everyone's identities. Back with Shayera, she finds out they're actually building a hyperspace bypass. Essentially, they're going to turn the Earth into a fast travel point, which is unfortunately going to blow up the planet. Bruce and Diana kiss a little bit, Flash and John give us some insight into how John's feeling, and Superman and John don't get much of anything here. Shayera then shows up to the Batcave to tell him what's going on. Don't even really know how she could have found out where it was, but whatever. There's a really nice little line that Shayera says while she's talking to John that gives us a pretty good piece of insight to how she's thinking. I did what I thought was right, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm not going to walk through the rest of the episode beat by beat, I'm just going to mention some big stuff and some stuff with Shayera and John. So they take control of the Watchtower again. Batman's going to drop the fucking Watchtower on the Thing, which he has to do manually. Superman, Diana, and John are wrecking shop, and then John gets into the force field control where he fights Birdman. I feel like Green Lanterns in general should never lose a 1v1. Shayera and the Dude fight, Superman's on his way to stop Batman from dying in the Watchtower, and at the last second the force field is shut down. Superman saves Batman, and the Justice League saves the world. At the end of the episode, the members of the League take a vote on whether or not Shayera should be allowed to remain in the League. But before she hears her answer, she decides that she doesn't deserve to be a member. After one last conversation with John, she flies into the distance. As I was writing this, I kept returning to that line. I did what I thought was right then, and that's what I'm doing now. That line is a perfect summation of Shayera's character. Rewatching the episodes where she starts to find herself falling in love with John, even though she has this mission she has to stay loyal to, makes those scenes so much more impactful to me. I know I've already spent a lot of time talking about Shayera, but just quickly I want to cover one more episode about her called Wake the Dead. So some teenagers revive Solomon Grundy and give him hella buffs. Want to see something that actually jump scared me?
Alright, I'm coming!
So Hawkgirl, Aquaman, and Ivar's android are hanging out at Dr. Fate's house. Essentially, this episode is Shayera feeling like shit because she betrayed everyone and realizes that she still needs to be a hero. She runs into John and Superman immediately, and we get some neat character stuff. But I'm only bringing this up to show that after all this time, everyone is still super pissed off at Shayera. Which, why wouldn't you be? I'm not going to mention much else from the episode other than Shayera old yellowing Grundy. It turns out that John abstained from the vote and Superman was a swing vote in her favor. But all in all, Shayera's arc is a contender for my favorite of the series. Fucking phenomenal. Jean is easily the most alien character in this series. Well, okay, I know this sounds fucking stupid, but there isn't a way to phrase this without sounding like an idiot. Most of Jean's scenes take place in the Watchtower. From the very beginning of the series, he thinks it's better to be on the Watchtower, essentially acting as a dispatcher for the Justice League. It's evident that he cares immensely for the people in the League, yet he feels isolated. I think it's important to mention his incredible character design. I'm sure you've seen it at some point in the background footage that I've shown, but this isn't what Jean looks like. This is. He's actively trying to make himself look more human. Keep in mind, no one in the League is uncomfortable being around aliens or anything of the sort, especially not Jean. Just little shit like that makes his character super compelling to me. But I want to talk about his arc and why it had to happen off screen. This episode depicts Jean's feelings of isolation from society. It opens with Diana confronting Jean about how he needs to mingle more with humanity. Which, I hate to derail from the plot of the episode already, but I didn't realize how much this is helped by knowing who Diana is. She was essentially in the same position as Jean, except she took the time to integrate into human society. I love the dynamics in the show, dude. It's so good. It's such a good show. So Diana goes into a political meeting on an iceberg, yada yada yada, who cares? I'm only here to talk about the ending of the episode. After they send the Viking ship into the sun, Jean says his goodbyes to the Justice League, beams down, assumes his human form, and then fucks off until the last episode of the series. This nigga John bagged a gilf and came back in the nick of time. What a true hero. I don't think this arc would have worked if they did it on screen. The entire point was that he needed to get used to being around humanity, and he wouldn't be able to do that on the Watchtower surrounded by the Justice League. While they do help people, most of them are egotistical assholes who are better than most of humanity by any actual useful measurement. He needed to be out there in the world. And big props to the writers for having the balls to do this. Because there isn't a single time where he's like, oh shit, New Zealand's on fire, I could probably help with that. No, he's just off bettering himself. I know I just said he's been pretty detached from the human race, but Jean really is the heart and soul of the Justice League, and what can I say? I just love my big green guy. Wally's another interesting one, but not because of his solo stuff, honestly. I gave Superman the title of most humanized character in the series, but Wally's a close runner-up to that. Oh, that wasn't even close to being funny. Should I cut that? I'm not gonna cut that. Most of what Flash gives to the show is his dynamics with the entire team, his villains, and the bad timeline. To demonstrate why I like this character, I don't even need a full episode. I need 2 scenes. Just to provide very quick context, Wally, Batman, and Orion are trying to stop Team We Fucking Hate the Flash from doing evil shit at the opening of the Flash Museum. Included in this evil gang is the Trickster, who keeps getting bullied by the other villains. Tell me if you've seen this clip on Twitter before. Orion wants to beat the shit out of Trickster to get the info out of him, but Wally just talks to him like he's a human being. After a short conversation, he gets everything he needs, and the Trickster says he's going to turn himself in. Before I mention this next bit, I'd like to point out that Orion keeps calling Wally things like childish, immature, foolish, just because he likes to make jokes. Okay, back to the episode. After the combat finishes up and the bad guys are caught, we get a line from Orion that goes, "Now I understand. You play the fool to hide a warrior's pain." That quote paints a pretty good picture of Wally's character, and I feel like it's a sentiment a lot of people can relate to. I'd have to watch Young Justice again to confirm, but I'm pretty sure this is what they end up doing with Wally in that show. And I don't know about CW Flash, but I'm not going to watch that show to find out. My point is, Wally's just trying to do his best to make everyone feel a little better, and that makes him pretty cool in my book. And I'm pretty sure that's the fastest I'm going to cover a character in this video. Fitting, huh? Don't have a lot to say here, but Lex has enough focus episodes throughout the series that it's probably worth mentioning. Lex has cancer due to kryptonite radiation for a pretty good chunk of the series, so his antics ramp up from the beginning to when he, is closer to death. He has some of my favorite episodes of the series, including the one about Ivar's android, both of them honestly. So yeah, I grew weirdly attached to extra evil Jeff Bezos, so sue me. Now that I've done a lot of talking about the individual characters, I think you're ready for me to talk about some of my favorite dynamics. Before I do this, I'd like to mention that practically everyone has an interesting dynamic with everyone else, but I'm only going to mention everyone once for the sake of time. And my sanity. I'd like to point out that Batman and Diana are probably my favorite not couple in fiction. This show is what popularized a pretty obvious ship between the two. As much as I don't really care for shipping in general, I think everyone can get behind this one. You can see this not relationship affecting almost every decision they make together. And the writers actually do a really good job of keeping it low-key. After all, we can't have another Shayera John scenario, right? A weaker writer might just have the two be together, although this wouldn't really gel too well with their established characters in the series. So instead we get great episodes like this little piggy. This episode actually begins with a scene where they openly discuss their want to be in a relationship. They run into, Mommy, sorry, I was a little distracted. So Cersei turns Diana into a pig, and Batman does the rock face. While looking for some assistance with the magic stuff, Batman finds Zatanna, which, damn! This episode is just full of women middle school me had a crush on. Zatanna can't do anything to reverse Cersei's magic. What's Cersei doing anyway? Mommy, sorry. So while they're trying to locate Cersei, Diana runs away. During his conversation with Zatanna, Batman is, for one of the 3 times total in the series, visibly and outwardly very frustrated. Batman brings in some other League members to help look for Diana, and this guy, Wannabeast, chases her into a slaughterhouse by accident. Batman, in order to find a snitch, goes to actual hell to look for some answers. Medusa tells them that Cersei is in the amphitheater at Mykonos? Whatever. Over on Diana's side of the episode, she's at serious risk of getting shot and eaten. Mommy? Because Batman and Zatanna can't really do much against Mommy, Batman offers something that he can never regain in order to return Diana to normal.
Am I blue? Am I blue? Ain't these tears in my eyes telling you?
Keeping her into the bargain, Cersei returns Diana to her original form. Batman tells Zatanna thank you, and to close the episode, he and Diana share a moment on the Watchtower. This is my favorite moment in the series, full stop. There's just something about it that's always stuck with me. Maybe it's because of the lighting and the camera work. Maybe it's the contrast between Mommy's very upbeat, bombastic performance and Batman's very understated piece. Not to mention, Kevin Conroy's incredible vocal performance just elevates a scene to a whole new level. There aren't many situations where I struggle to put how I feel about something into words, but this scene is just so flawless to me. I don't know what to say. Diana and Batman have such a genuine connection throughout the series, and my only complaint is that we don't get to see it more often. John and Shayera hold a really interesting position because they're easily the most focused on romantic relationship in the series. They're one of 4 established couples between focal characters in the show, the others being Question and Huntress, Green Arrow and Black Canary, and John and Vixen. Jonathan fucking? What? While I was writing this, I must have lost my train of thought because there's no way I just wrote John is in fucking and left it there. But you know what? I stand by it. Sure, John is fucking. Whatever. How do you guys watch these? I swear I'm incoherent, dude. I just wanted to talk about an episode and a half that really focused on John and Shayera's relationship, because they do some cool stuff with it near the tail end of the show. In the episode called Shadow of the Hawk, we're introduced to this guy Carter Hall. He's an archaeologist who found some ancient Thanagarian tech in an ancient Egyptian tomb. After Shayera confirms it's Thanagarian, he asks her out. Funny little shadow guy. Turns out Carter here is a White Knight stalker, so they go to Egypt to check out the tomb with Batman following close behind. Turns out, when Carter touched an ancient Thanagarian device that holds memories like a captain log, okay, watch this. It did that. Carter now thinks he and Shayera are the reincarnations of Shayera Hol in a different Shayera Hol, so he's just insane. After some combat ensues, the three of them make it out, and so does the Shadow Man. Flashing forward 8 episodes, and the Shadow Man has his sights set on John. Right before Vixen leaves for a photo shoot, the Shadow Guy kidnaps John and threatens to get Shayera. The ladies figure out that the dude will probably go after Carter, so they pop by the museum where he works at. Oh look, it's a memory thingy. So 8,000 years ago, Qatar and Shayera Hol crashed in ancient Egypt and turned the land into a dazzling utopia. Shayera wants to have a baby, but Qatar is too focused on the mission. After they talk for a moment, Jean is... What? That's stupid. Vishari returns to the city and shows Shayera a good time riding horses. Yeah, horses. Look at this nigga creeping in the back. So Vishari is slick as fuck. Qatar sees this and mutters that he wishes they were dead. So the servant poisons both of them. Qatar, having lost his love, drinks the poison too. Actually a tragedy. Turns out the Shadow Guy is Carter's darkest desires given life. After everything is settled, Carter decides to stop pursuing Shayera because they both know how the story is supposed to end. John reveals that when he and Batman went to the future, he ran into their son, although he decides he's going to stay with the Vixen for the time being. As the episode comes to a close, Shayera asks Batman to tell her about her son. I'm personally not a fan of how this plot ends, although I do get it. Maybe it's because I've grown to like Shayera so much over the past 5 seasons worth of content that I binged, but I wanted her to get a bit of a happier ending. This is basically just me being butthurt because I didn't want him to end up with Vixen though. I love watching these two grow closer through Justice League and watching them try to awkwardly reconnect in Unlimited. Just an honorable mention for my favorite moment of the show, I really like Shayera risking half of Las Vegas getting nuked to save John. The point is, it's a wonderfully complicated relationship and I loved watching every second of it. This is one I'm probably spending the least amount of my time on. That being said, this is a really understated dynamic that I love. Jean and Clark are the respective last members of their race. Yeah, I know, like Kara and whatever, shut up, that's not the point. The point is, they have a lot in common. The most important shared aspect of their characters is the theme of what it means to be human. This part of their relationship is written excellently, and it's a fucking shame that no one talks about it, because there's a really cute episode that talks about it a lot. So let's talk about the Christmas episode. Clark invites Jean over for Christmas. This is the first time that Jean is treated like a person by anyone not in the league, at least on screen. He even remarks that he's never seen the Clark side of Superman's personality. This episode has a lot of cute shit, dude. Like, look, when Mrs. Kent knits a sweater for Jean that he can't fit into, he fucking shapeshifts to fill it in. That's just such a nice little moment. Most of the episode is just people treating Jean like a person, and I'm here for it. Later that night, Jean floats into town and he watches people taking care of their loved ones and shit. As an act of kindness, he flies onto the roof of a little girl who's doubting Santa Claus, and in the morning, he's singing, filled with the Christmas spirit. Jean and Clark share a really cool bond that I don't think people talk about very often. Both of them have gone through immense loss. They both suffered silently for ages. And despite all of that, they're both incredibly kind and compassionate people. They're not perfect, but who is? They're only human. So full disclosure, my camera died a minute ago. I waited like 10 minutes while I was on the charger and I shoved it back in my fucking camera. So, the battery I mean. So the angle might be off. I'm sorry if it is. Yeah, Wally doesn't get a duo. While we're on the topic of Wally getting shafted, he doesn't show up for the first season of Justice League Unlimited. How is that fair? Wally fits a weird niche on the team where he doesn't have any super developed dynamics with anyone, but his existence is the only thing stopping everyone from going insane. The episode opens with the Justice League storming the White House where Lex Luthor is president. Superman decides, you know what? Fuck it! Murder! I'm going a little out of order here, but the thing that sent them crazy was Wally's death. That's the only reason Clark justifies murder. In this dimension, Martian Manhunter has become unfeeling. Superman is a dictator. Wonder Woman's, I don't know, she doesn't talk much. John and Shayera reminisce and talk about how they miss Wally. The idea that Wally's what's keeping the Justice League from going rogue is played with a lot later in the series. I think that this role generally works well for speedsters on teams like this. They're normally the goofy ones on the team, so it makes sense that their death is what sends everyone into a megalomaniacal state. This is obviously very well written, but I wish it was given a little more time to shine. This dynamic after it's established is only really messed with heavily with one more episode, but it is brought up a handful of times. I'm sad it didn't get developed as much as the others, but I'm so glad we got it. Ah yes, how could I write a video like this without talking about the team as a unit? But what is there to talk about at this point? I've already talked about how each of them function individually. I've already gone over how their dynamics enrich their lives and make them mature as people. So all that's left is to talk about how the show affected me. Growing up with this series, or at least the reruns, taught me so much. The lessons and stories the series decided to tell throughout its time on air are ones that stuck with me throughout my entire life. Lessons of empathy, lessons of kindness, of wisdom, responsibility, courage, righteousness, and humility. Rewatching the series now that I've grown as a person is a bizarre experience. As lame as it is, this show taught me what it meant to be a hero to the people I care about. Okay, enough rambling. Let's talk about Justice League. The series, and especially the series finale, is built upon the powerful base that the early episodes established. Without its fantastic character writing, it would essentially feel like a light show. It's cool when you see it the first time, but there would be no substance on a rewatch. This, however, is not the case for Justice League Unlimited. Even while rewatching it just to fine-tune the script, I would notice small little details that would make me have to rewrite entire paragraphs. This is a series I could watch dozens of times over and still find new things to appreciate. Earlier I said that this series has been unrivaled for the past 20 years, and I stand by that. Marvel, modern DC, no one's even come close to hitting the incredible highs of this series. And that's not even a discredit to what's coming out now. These shows are still good, but this show is just that fucking incredible. This show revolutionized what superhero media could be. This show redefined what it meant to be a true hero. This show is Justice League Unlimited. Holy shit, this video was long. If you haven't already hit the like button, come on. You wouldn't watch this whole fucking thing if you didn't like it. I'm just gonna keep shamelessly plugging myself here. Please subscribe. This is the first of the big 5 videos I want to release for the year, so if you like this, you're definitely gonna like the other stuff that's coming down the pipeline. Comment something down below. I don't know, your favorite superhero, favorite color, favorite food, something, please. I'm gonna be responding to as many comments as I can, as I do normally, and I'm always super interested in hearing what you guys have to say. That's gonna be it from me tonight. I'm Knightley. You've been incredible. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.